everyone, and welcome to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. I'm your host, Sam Torres, and I'm super excited because today we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite subject, backlinks. And I'm joined by three fantastic experts in the field, Debbie Chu and Morgan and Greg, the co-founders of Jolly SEO. So really excited to have you guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. Debbie, let's start with you giving us a little bit of an intro of who you are and your background.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you first for having me on the podcast. My name is Debbie, and I am the Global SEO Manager at Dialpad. I've been doing digital marketing for like maybe 8 or 9 years now, and I like to kind of focus on SEO. Specifically, link building has kind of been that area that I like to play around with and try to grow in and kind of teach others how to do. So that's a bit about me.
Awesome. Excited to learn more from you. And yes, definitely to hear about what works in 2023. Because I've been doing this for 13 years, so I've seen a lot of different tactics for link building.
Mm-hmm.
So excited to learn more about what is working for you. Morgan, Greg, would love to hear about you guys and what you're doing at Jolly SEO.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll lead us off. My name is Morgan Taylor. I'm one of the co-founders at Jolly SEO. We got our start about 7 years ago, initially with content, and we've kind of moved in since to like specifically the SEO realm, and even more specifically link building. And our emphasis there is on organic techniques. We've really leaned into platforms like Help a Reporter Out, and more recently we've introduced kind of more traditional guest post type formats, but also maintaining that kind of organic approach, that non-paid approach. So.
Very cool.
Yeah, and my name's Greg Heilers. I'm the other co-founder here at Jolly. I think one of the things we'll dive into today that Morgan didn't cover that we do, we really love, he mentioned the platforms like the PR angle. And I think that's something, I know we just came off of MozCon, right, where we got to see you there, Sam. So that was something that was exciting to me, is kind of that hybrid zone of what's the value of a branded placement, maybe even without a backlink.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right. I'm excited to dig in. We ready for the first question? All right. We're just going to start really light and easy here. What's actually working for you when it comes to what tactics or strategies are working for building links here right now in 2023? Anybody?
I mean,
yeah.
Is it not working?
I think we're just meeting each other, some of us, so we don't want to step on toes.
Oh, no, totally. I understand.
I'll start by stealing the mic and say we specialize in something called journalist outreach. So there's Help a Reporter, there's ProfNet, there's Help a B2B, there's all these platforms. And the consistent theme is they're dead, they don't work. We still send thousands of emails a month through these platforms in aggregate. And I mean, it's our business model. So like, we definitely wouldn't do it if it didn't work. And what I love about it is like, there are some premium versions you can pay for, but for the person DIYing or who's on a small budget in-house, a lot of this stuff is free. And I think where people burn out is they don't persist and realize because it's free, you have to dig for the results. You're not paying to play. So it's still working to me. That's my take.
Awesome. Debbie, what's working for y'all at Dialpad?
For me, I like to kind of, since we work in-house, we have a lot of like different partners that we can try to collaborate with, like people who integrate with Dialpad's software. And so one thing that I really like to do is just try to figure out like who are your friends in the industry and reach out to them and figure out like what are ways that you can try to help each other. So like maybe they invite you to a podcast and you go ahead and do that. And then maybe on your end, you're writing a blog post and you want some sort of expert quote. You can ask them for help. And from there, you're kind of building that relationship so that maybe in the future, you can get a link from them. They might maybe link to you. And so the goal is really to create a relationship. It's getting that link is a bit of like the cherry on top.
I love that, calling out the relationship. Greg, do you feel like because it is your business model, are you consistently finding success with the same sources? Do you still see success when you're working that way?
Well, that's actually fascinating to me. So Debbie and Sam, one thing Morgan and I were very acutely aware of is our original tactic. Now, as Morgan said, we do stuff off these platforms, but because we use these platforms in our clients' names, we build relationships for them, not for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, unlike a PR agency or if you're in house where you're building these nice relationships for yourself, it was a short term win for a long term loss. For years, we were like, we are not building a network. We see people investing in the long term. And that's why one reason why we started doing off platform stuff, because I see huge value in that, because absolutely some people are just friendlier and more willing to partner up. And we were constantly in the background, like in the dark.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's funny how I feel like with marketing, it always comes back to the relationships. It's that way for generating new business, keeping your customers. And so even this side of generating backlinks and getting that digital form of word of mouth is still comes back to the relationship. So Greg, you mentioned earlier that you guys are still sending thousands of emails per month sometimes. What are some of the strategies or process shortcuts, I guess, that you found to help cut down on the level of work? Is this can be a really time intensive and resource intensive discipline?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of these platforms, well, they all have different formats. So one thing, if you're doing this at scale that we've invested in, and it's still resource intensive, but it's front loaded, is a great system. We use Airtable. So we input all the opportunities there. We assign the SEO metrics. We apply our knowledge of do they give links or not? Because again, we focus on link building, and I totally respect, Debbie, what you said. Like, the link may come later, but for us, client fulfillment, we apply all that to each opportunity, and then we filter based on the minimum criteria that we know we need to provide for our clients. So for us, that's really helpful, is just cut through the noise, because each pitch you send out maybe takes, let's say, 15-20 minutes to craft a thoughtful 150 words. And then you need to send roughly 15 of those if you're like sorted decent and fit the space. So multiply that, the opportunity curation is pretty critical.
Wow, that's great insight. Morgan, Debbie, any tips that you have for how to focus your time and knowing, where to spend that time versus you can use a shortcut?
I think for me, just kind of like what Greg mentioned, prospecting and figuring out like who exactly is the most ideal types of websites to reach out to, and like who exactly should you reach out to from that website is really helpful. You don't want to send out emails to the wrong people, or maybe an irrelevant website that maybe getting a link there might not benefit you. So I think the prospecting stage is super critical, and then after that is also just personalizing. For our end is personalizing emails wherever possible. Like, I think with link building, a lot of people's inboxes have been kind of full with kind of generic outreach, right? So I think one way to kind of stand out from that is to really try to be genuine, figure out like how can you be beneficial to the person who is receiving your email, and then writing an email in that manner.
Gotcha. Now I'm curious, just because obviously we just all came from MozCon, and the theme of the con was definitely AI. Have you guys had a chance to test out those tools being part of your prospecting and then email drafting process? Or, tried it, didn't like it, haven't tried it? Where do you guys stand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I could jump in. I think, at MozCon, obviously AI was a big topic, right? I mean, I think we probably around a third of the speakers touched on it on some level. And, I think a lot of the initial reaction of people is like, okay, this is like the enemy, right?
Mm.
But in terms of what we're doing, especially when it comes to outreach to journalists and stuff, we definitely see a lot of potential. We know that people are doing that kind of thing. So it's something that we want to see and experiment in terms of how this can help our processes out, right? But to do it in a responsible way, not just to send generated content out to people like that, but to see how it can possibly improve what we're doing as an alternative service even. So
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
so,
for
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, for my team, we have found like generative AI really helpful in terms of like adjusting the tone of an email.
Hmm.
So I think for generative AI and SEO, it's a lot about understanding what can generative AI do and like what is it good for and what is it not good for. So for example, like if you're trying to find contact information or like an email or like a specific person to contact an organization, sometimes generative AI might just generate what it thinks is correct. It might not actually be like a person at that organization. Like you really need to fact check that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for something that's a bit more creative, like writing a more personalized outreach email, like maybe you can throw in your draft and ask ChatGPT to kind of write it in a more friendly way or make it more appealing to this certain niche. So that's kind of one way to use generative AI for link building.
That's really cool. I like
This
your perspective of, hey, here's what I already have and here's what I've already created and that works, but can I better tailor it to that specific audience? Greg, it looked like you were about to say something.
Well, just going off the tone thing, something really comical happened to us. I mean, it's slightly less comical because it had serious business impact. So, like Morgan said, we don't leverage it in our outreach campaigns because, but we early on we took a stand against it. I think next year you'll see us market a product that's leaning heavy into it, but it's like clearly defined because that is what's coming into the marketplace. But in the meantime, you also have the what I call like generation one, the AI detectors, right? We've all seen them out there.
Mm-hmm.
And our writer team is totally flabbergasted right now. Like they cannot keep up with these AI detectors and they're using ChatGPT to try to make their content sound more human-like, which is like this totally bizarre situation. And I'm actually uh, acquaintances, let's say, I have a working relationship with owners of most of these platforms. And I just tell them like, hey, can you guys like cut us some slack here? Because most of these people come from agency backgrounds. So they totally get how frustrating this would be that in one case, 30% of our outreach was thrown in the dumpster by a generation one AI detector. And like, that's termination level offense at our agency. And now these people are having to use AI to try to pass the AI detector. It's a wild thing going on.
That is wild. I've also seen things where, like, I feel like just as someone who receives a lot of this type of inquiry, um, it's really interesting to see. Like, I feel like we've almost developed a little bit of an AI detector just from being able to recognize the patterns and how ChatGPT usually likes to craft sentences. But you also have to be worried, like, I've seen on Twitter where people are being called out for saying that their content is AI generated and actually they just have autism. And so it's just little things like that, which actually that's not a little thing, but it is kind of interesting to see how we're trying to use these tools to be more authentic and be more human, and then just kind of both sides of that conversation and how that's going. Yeah, I can't imagine how frustrating that is because the AI detectors, they are not created equal. I've definitely used a few different of those platforms, and it's wild sometimes the results that you get. So I can only imagine the frustration. Um, but
Yeah,
also,
I
as
hadn't heard
brands are
that.
receiving that, we need to be more open to it is a tool. It doesn't mean that there's a lack of care or touch point with it, I think,
Mm.
you know? Um, so with that, when you guys are doing your outreach, are there certain types of backlinks that you're seeing provide more success in general than others? So like if it's more about digital PR versus guest blogging, what are some of the links that you guys are definitely seeing more success or different areas, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we like Greg mentioned earlier, we have an Airtable base. We have pretty good records of what domains out there are doing what, right? So we'll generally have a good sense of if we send a pitch to this domain, is it going to generate like a no follow or a mention or a do follow link. Um, initially we kind of leaned into like this is a do follow service. That's what people want. But as we're kind of going down the line, we're kind of discovering that there is a lot of value, and people do see a lot of value even to just a branded mention that they might get. I personally think no follow links are a healthy part of a backlink profile. But in terms of the success, yeah, it really depends on the domain. But I do think frequently a few more are switching to just doing a mentions and no follow type of situation, but it's always fluid. So
That makes sense. Debbie, you were nodding your head quite a bit. Things to add to that?
Yeah, I think there are going to be still metrics that people will look at, like DA or DR, to understand the overall authority of a domain. Although that we need to keep in mind that's not Google's metrics. It's more the way that I kind of use it is to kind of filter a prospect list. I think a lot of times we also look at maybe the traffic trajectory of a website to see whether or not it makes sense to work with them and try to get a link from them. And I think another thing to also consider is relevance. I think in the past we've focused a lot on metrics like DR, organic traffic, etc. But nowadays I think people are looking more towards relevance and trying to get links that are actually relevant to their organization. So like for example, at Dialpad, we are a business communication software. And so getting a link from maybe like a CRM platform is going to be more relevant than maybe like, I don't know, something about like mining cryptocurrency, for example. Like that's just so irrelevant that it might not make sense to get a link from there, even if their DR is higher than the CRM platform. So I think relevance is something that we should continue to look at. And I think that's also something that Google pays attention to as well.
I agree with that so much. When I'm training new SEOs, I usually like to talk about like your backlinks should be like you bring your trivia team, right? Whenever you're going out for trivia, you want the person who knows medical things, and you want the person who knows all the sports trivia. And it's the same kind of thing for the references for your different lines of business, your different products, whatever it is you may be marketing. It's really about that relevance, because I always think about like, are you going to listen to your friend who's a doctor and is recommending this chiropractor, or like this 6 friends who are in marketing and play on Facebook all day? And I'm making that joke because I am a marketer. Which of those referrals actually carries more weight? And I think, that's, to me, that's essentially what Google and other search engines are trying to do with backlinks. Is it's that digital form of word of mouth, but then how do you qualify how good that referral is, right?
I have a question for you two ladies, because you know more than myself here. We debate this one. For you in relevancy, is it domain level or article level? Or, I mean, is there like is one more important than the other?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think generally we look at it from a domain level, but I mean, there are certain instances where, there's potentially some way to tie in cryptocurrency and maybe Dialpad. And so I think we prioritize the domain relevance, but then we're open to if there's a way to kind of spin it so that it makes sense and make it just relevant to that page.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's usually going to be the domain, the high level topics. I want them to be relevant. We've definitely had clients in the past who maybe had this one section of their site that seemed completely unrelated, that was still working well. And so, there's definitely conversations to be had. But as a rule of thumb, I'm usually looking for the overall domain itself. But that's a good question. I like it. Now, Morgan, you mentioned earlier that you think no-follow links are definitely part of a healthy backlink strategy and profile. Tell me more about that. Why do you think that? Where have you seen the success? Yeah, expand, please.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think if a site is generating backlinks to the value of their content, they're going to naturally acquire quite a few no follow links. It's really unnatural if your backlink profile is just do follow. It means you probably purchased all those links or something similar along those lines. Also, my understanding is that the no follow tag is really just a recommendation. It's not a this link will contribute 0 link juice to the to the site. So with that in mind, my opinion is if it's a high quality site, a good article that you have a link from, and it's no follow, then it's a safe bet that that's going to help you out in the long term. I don't have any firm data on it, and I know a lot of people are all over the place in the SEO community about it. Although I think it's getting more towards people are see the value in no follow links. But yeah, hopefully that kind of answers.
I want to go back to what you said about the brand mentions. I feel like that's a huge part because, obviously the more that we're seeing interaction with a brand, that can help fill out your knowledge graph, which then just continues to enhance Google's and other search engines' understanding of your brand. Debbie, as someone who's internal, how do you guys view the no follow links? Do you still consider that a win when you score them?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on the campaign that we're working on.
Sure.
So when it comes to like kind of guest posting related, we do look for links or websites that give followed links as opposed to no follow. But if we do something that's more of like what we call like a research report, that's basically we do some sort of study or send out a survey, and we try to find interesting data about a specific topic, and then we use those insights, create a long form piece of content, and then we try to pitch those statistics to journalists and hopefully have them report about them. For that type of campaign, then we generally are open to whatever media coverage that we can get. I think even if you don't get a followed link, let's say you get a no follow link, but it's on a really great publication that really impacts the visibility of that linkable asset that you created. And that kind of trickles down so that maybe other blogs will learn about this report that you created and then they might link to it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of value in terms of getting no fault links or just mentions on really valuable websites, because that just really increases the visibility of your brand or the visibility of your content, and that can lead to links. It also kind of, what you mentioned, it kind of helps Google understand your entity. It helps with WEAT to help understand like what is your experience and what is your expertise.
Yeah, that's great. So with that in mind, how do you guys, internally, Debbie, how are you tracking performance? Morgan and Greg, how are you, communicating the value of what you guys are doing to your clients, or what metrics are they looking at? Is basically what, I feel like a lot of times when it comes to backlink campaigns, it's really, all right, we got this many links placed. And actually, I know this is not how you guys work since we are a client, but would love to know, like, what are the other things you do to demonstrate really the value behind it, especially if you did, if some of those links delivered are no follow, what are some of those metrics that you're looking at or encouraging your clients to look at to see the actual success of a campaign?
Yeah, I think Morgan used the word fluid. So we have some clients who have been with us for years, and they came in under a different context. So we used to do this hardline do follow only because it was simple for us, the communication with the outside world. And now when we speak with people interested in signing on with us, the value that Debbie's communicating and that Morgan was talking about, it's really simple for me. I break it down like, look, these big names that you want to do the as seen on your website, the Forbes, etc., we will happily pitch them for you if you want us to, but they only give no follow unless you pay them, $6,000. You pay some dude to slip a link in. So it's easier for them to say like, that sounds good to me. There's still people who see zero value, right? So, but to answer your question directly, our client displays, we do use these metrics, domain rating and organic traffic through Ahrefs, and then there's always over the years a cute client who will like put another column for DA because they don't like DR or whatever. But at the end of the day, like it is a proxy for the value that we kind of all try to agree on. So currently we use DR and organic traffic from Ahrefs, and then there's always talks. I wanted us to create a metric. We didn't get there in our last team meetup, but I think there's room for improvement for sure.
Very cool.
For me, for the follow links that we try to go after, we try to get those links to really important SEO pages on our website. And so one really important metric in that case is the position of the the main keyword of that page. So let's say we're trying to rank for VoIP providers, and we've gotten a few links to that page. We want to monitor how does that link sort of impact the rankings over like month over month. And so if we can see like month over month we're getting more links, and then we're seeing that ranking improve, then we know that it's working. Another important thing to keep in mind for something like that is that you might build links to a certain point where your page may not need links anymore. Like you might have more links and higher quality links than everything else on the first page of Google. In that case, you really want to step back and revisit, like, okay, why is maybe my competitor outranking my page even though I have more links? Is it the content? Is like the search intent change? Is my page too slow? Things like that. So you really need to look at it holistically, not just looking at the total number of links to that page.
Of course, yeah. Is there a what do you give as kind of like the guiding of I have enough links? Right. Where do you get that feeling from?
I think it's just mostly just checking the SERPs and like looking at, so like Ahrefs, looking at maybe the number of referring domains to the other pages, and then also just checking the quality. So if I feel like the quality of our links overall is way better than the other results, then it's potentially time to pause and revisit other ways to improve that piece of content so that it can rank better.
So you're doing it all based on the competitive landscape.
Yes.
Love that. And I think that is 90% of the reason why we say it depends in SEO. It's because it's really just what is everybody else doing in your space? How competitive is it? So with those things in mind, knowing that, there's never enough time to do as much curated and custom outreach as we want to do, being able to know exactly where the right links are going to come from, or the kind of content, there's a lot of different pieces of this that is very challenging. But for each of you, and I'm going to start with Morgan, what do you think is the biggest challenge that SEOs are facing with link building today? And I'll give you time because I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate that. Biggest challenge, I mean, I think a lot has changed in the last few years, even in terms of backlinking and how people are doing it. It's pretty hard to sometimes to sell, like, what are you doing different that that all those kind of backlink catalog agencies aren't doing, right? So by that I mean the ones where you can just pick out your site, pick out your keyword, this and that, and plug it in exactly how you want it, have the content exactly how you want it, that kind of thing, rather than giving the agency the leeway to make those decisions for you. It's also, of course, getting more competitive on platforms like Help a Reporter Out. I mean, we still have a lot of success, but that's, we always have to stay a step above what other people are doing, so that we can keep our responses at the top and the journalists seeing them and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I mean, those would be two that I would point out. Yeah.
Very cool. Debbie, how about for you?
I think the one of the number one challenges is still, people's inboxes are filled with low quality outreach emails. I think that has impacted everyone's perception of link building, and when people see a outreach email, they just trash it or mark it as spam because of that. And so I think it's really important to try to approach outreach a little bit differently and figure out like what exactly is that value that you're trying to give to the recipient of the email, and not like a little bit less of that spray and pray approach that a lot of people have been doing in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing is also there's just a lot of different ways to build links. Even like some that we haven't discussed today, like maybe like unlinked mentions, or there's quite a few. And I think what companies really should figure out is what works in within their industry. So don't only look at maybe like one or two of your closest competitors to see what they're doing, but also try to broaden your reach and figure out like how exactly are people within the industry, maybe not direct competitors, getting links, and then figuring out, okay, let's try to test a few different tactics. It can be Haro, it can be other things. Maybe we will find success that our competitors have not been able to be successful with in the past.
Love that. Greg, you're up.
It's going to be hard. They covered some great stuff between those 4 or 5, what Debbie and Morgan said, I think. So I guess I'll focus on like on-site. I think it's easy as link builders. And I know, Debbie, we're in like a slightly different dynamic, right? Because you're in-house and we're almost like free consultants for our clients. But when it comes to on-site content, that's a huge challenge for us, and maybe even when you're in-house, because maybe you don't control all the content, right? I don't know. It's one of the biggest pain points we can have when the on-site content doesn't merit a backlink that's earned. I think one thing that's pretty consistent here between the 4 of us, it seems like we want to earn these. We don't really want to pay to play, and I'm not here to knock that space, but the truth is when you go to earn it, like a lot of things Debbie was saying, you got to treat these people. I always tell our team and anyone willing to listen, like they're people that don't owe us anything. And, all the nuances to that we can leave for another conversation, but they don't want to give links to garbage, to empty websites, to stuff filled with typos. So I think in an age where it's cheaper to produce content, that includes on-site, and it's a pretty consistent thing that we have to coach our clients on. Like, hey, you want good links, that's awesome, but if you don't have a real person to your website, and I know that's not Dialpad, but some people spinning up websites, and if you don't have good quality content, why would anyone? These are endorsements. I always say link building is like a social circle. Like you're evaluating people based on their friends group. Like, why would you endorse that kind of empty setup, or worse, like a really red flaggy situation? So I think the environment we're in, where it's super cheap to produce content, the temptation's always there to have a really cheap site, and then I don't think you're going to get the kind of links you're looking for with that.
Backlink strategies that we talk about are usually about, it is going to be augmenting the content strategy that you already have. So how do we take, if you don't have that, then honestly, we can't really talk about a backlink strategy most of the time, or it's time to talk to a digital PR firm or things like that is usually where we go. Because I think you're absolutely right that it needs to be something that you can actually earn. It needs to be something other brands would want to put their name on, because that's essentially what you're asking them to do. So love that call out. Also, if people are having a hard time with their content strategy, Greg, you were talking about Airtable. We also love Airtable, and we have a content and keyword gap analysis tool template that we've built in Airtable. So anybody can download it. It's on our blog. But yes, +1 for Airtable. It's awesome.
Well, and +1 for the gray dot, right? Because just last week I emailed you, Sam, with someone who came to us, and they're like, want to work with you guys, but like I often do, I'm like, I think you need to speak with someone who can manage your on-site first. Links are really important, but it seems like you have some on-site issues to address first.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And yes, I think you've got to make sure that your house is in order before you start having the open house, right? Ideally. Says the person who, I still have boxes I haven't unpacked, and I've been in my house for 3 years, but it's fine. Much better at websites. So to get us closed out, Debbie, Morgan, Greg, where should people, if they want to connect with you, if they want to work with you, where should they find you? Debbie, I'll start with you.
Okay, so to find me, it's probably Twitter or X is the best place to find me. My handle is justdeb with 3 B's, JUSTDEBBB. I used to write on my blog, but then I've mostly been writing on Wix's blog recently. So if you are more of a beginner in terms of link building, definitely check out Wix's SEO hub. I've written a few articles and still working on some right now. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
That's fantastic. And then Debbie, I know you're also an active member of Women in Tech SEO. So if you identify as female and you haven't joined the community yet, my question to you is, why? It's so great.
Yes. Join us.
Yes. So definitely anyone who identifies as female is always welcome. So we'd love to build a community. But not to take away from Morgan and Greg, where can our listeners, readers, however they're consuming this, where can they find you if they want to work with you?
All right, I'll go first. Greg is more active on social media. So for me, it's just an email to morgan@jollyseo.com. Or if you want, I am on LinkedIn as well, so you can find me there. But yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, same here. LinkedIn, Greg Heilers, jollyseo.com as well. And we have a Facebook group. We like to share pretty niche just about this kind of white hat link building. So you can search for us, Jolly SEO, on Facebook, and you'll find our group. And I just want to say another plug for Women in Tech SEO, because I always love to mention that one to ladies. I think I love our mix today, but I'm sure you two know it's not always the split, and it's SEO can be intimidating, and that's a great forum I hear for ladies, and I always recommend it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I am fortunate to be in a number of communities, but I'm just going to be honest, none of them are close to the level of engagement or support with the community that Arish has built. So shout out to Arish, who's the founder of Women in Tech SEO. That foundation literally changed my life. That's how I met Tori, my business partner. So the Grey Dot Company as it stands today would not exist without it. So
That's awesome.
It's always fun. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for listening. If you have any questions, be sure to submit them to thegrey.company/ask-SEO, and we will catch you next time. Bye.